friends, welcome back to my channel. Today we're here for a Friday Reads video, which is also a September recap because it is Friday the 1st of October. And so I thought I'd just do a little recap of all the books that I read in September, which is a lot. It's not as many as I was hoping, but I did read a lot and I'm really proud of it. So this is me kind of reveling in that glory for a little bit. Forgive me for my narcissism if that's what this is. But I really loved almost all the books that I read in September. So I just wanted to share them with you in one space. I did reviews for most of the books already. Two of the books were selections for the book club. So I'm going to be making another video for that. That hasn't been done yet because we haven't had the discussion for the book club yet. But most of these I've already reviewed, so I'm not going to talk too much about them. I just wanted to mention them all here in this space so that you could go check them out. So these are the physical books that I read in September. It's a lot, I know. And I also had two ebooks that I read. So let me just mention them briefly. First book that I finished was Passing by Nella Larson. This one is set in early 1900s in Harlem, New York, and Chicago. And we're exploring colorism, the idea of passing, that fair complexioned black people could exist as blacks when they chose to, and they could pass for white in other spaces. And in this one we're comparing the lives of two women, both of who pass, one blatantly and one just sometimes she allows herself to enjoy the benefits that the ambiguity of her appearance provides. The books that we read for the book club, let me just get those out of the way, and I'll have both of them. One of them is Omelos by Derek Walcott. The other one is Nor Any Country by Garth St. Omer. I don't have that right here. Sorry. The other book that I read was the second book that I finished in September, Thanks for Waiting, Dori Shafri. This was a memoir about getting some of the things that other people get in their youth, getting it a little later in life. And so this one kind of focuses on her becoming an intern later in life, meeting the man that she wants to marry and eventually marrying him, and their attempts to have a child, and exploring infertility and in vitro fertilization, and the very early stages of motherhood. Didn't center on all of those experiences evenly. Like, she spent a lot of time talking about the failed relationships that she had, and not as much time really delving into the intimacy of her marriage, which, may not necessarily be what you're looking for. But I could also understand if you want to preserve some of the intimacy of your marriage. So this was a little uneven in that respect. She didn't necessarily balance out all the experiences in this across the story, but I really enjoyed this. It talks about being a late bloomer, which I guess some people might say I am, because some of the things that she experienced later in life are things that I experienced as well. Becoming a wife and mother way outside of my 20s and 30s. So I also read Open Water, which is a novel by Caleb Azuma Nelson. This one focuses on Black British young people. The man is of Ghanaian descent. His parents are from Ghana. And this is a love letter. This is a love relationship that is being explored between a man and a woman who meet each other in a platonic way, but they feel drawn to each other. And this is exploring the development of the relationship, the capacity, but also the inability to center on the newness and the beauty of love, because there are all these other big things happening. So this author talks a lot about music and art and the potential of expression, but also the failure to express certain things with just feelings, because you need words to represent things fully. And I love this. There was a lot of feeling just reading this book, and so I loved it. I read Perfect Timing by Owen Nichols. This one was a gift from the publishers, um, as was this one, as was this one. But this one, um, oh, this one talks about two people who are drawn to each other, see each other, and want to meet. But no, they see each other, they meet each other, they want to connect. They both feel like there's something between them, but a lie keeps them apart. Well, a lie drives them apart in the beginning, and then the attempts to apologize and the various ways that they move on with their lives just keeps them apart for a really long time, but they remain close-ish friends who are able to just kind of pick up every time they leave off. And I love this. I love the idea of knowing someone over a long period of time, giving that person space to become who they need to be in isolation almost, but also staying close enough, maintaining that that awareness of each other and that connection with each other, that you can still support each other. And I loved also how even at times when things weren't going so great and there may have been a little animosity between them, that they still maintained that baseline of respect and friendship, that they would still do nice things for each other even if they didn't feel so great about each other in a romantic way. So this one also showed a man who suffers from social anxiety, and I loved seeing that represented here on these pages, that the man was imperfect and it was the woman who was giving him tools to kind of deal with things. And I love this. I love this book a lot. I also read Write My Name Across the Sky by Barbara O'Neill. This one compared three women living in New York, two sisters and the aunt who raised them after their mother died. The mother was a rock star, and we're seeing these two, they're her two daughters. They're not really young necessarily. They're 30s, women in their 30s, and seeing how they deal with the legacy of their mother, some of the things that their mother did, and how they kind of reject her legacy in one way and how they continue her legacy in another way. We see their attempts, their failures at love, but also we're really pursuing the relationship between these two sisters. And then there's this alternate storyline where the aunt is an older woman. She's in her like late 70s, and she's an Instagram influencer, which is cool. It's really cool to celebrate the sage like wisdom of older women. But she also was involved in some mid-level crimes in her younger years, and this just her past catching up with her, and just seeing the dynamics between these three women, these three very different women, showing three different sides, three different faces of womanhood. And I loved it. I love this one. Also a gift from the publishers. This one I loved. This, another gift from the publishers. I read a lot of books from publishers last month. I started reading this a few months ago, and I just finished it. This was a memoir by comedian Gina Yashere. Tackhanded is how she talks about left-handedness, but not just straight left-handedness, the perception of left-handedness in African culture. She's of Nigerian descent, she grew up in England as well. And the marriage of cultures, the marriage of cultures, or what should be marriage when there is an imperfect union. So how Africans view left-handedness as negative, but how that is just who she is. And so we see that represented through lots of different ways, lots of different parts of Gina Yashere's life. Like her mother wants her to be a doctor, and she wants to be a comedian. The mother wants her to get married and have children, and she is gay. And so she talks about, having to forge her own way and live her own life, and just learning to be comfortable in her own skin, even if other people see that as different or even negative. So I love this, love that one. I read Simone Biles' memoir, Courage to Soar, A Body in Motion, A Life in Balance. I had started this a few months ago as well and just finished it in September. This is also a gift from the publishers. This one's from Zondervan Publishers. And this one talks about her early life. This one was written after her successes at the 2016 Olympics in Rio. So there's a lot that it doesn't cover about what's happening with Simone Biles currently, but it shows you how she became what she is now. And it focuses on her overcoming her own social anxiety, her response to social pressure, and the village that raised her and supports her. She talks about the influence of her parents, the people who she calls her parents, who even though she's adopted by them, her grandfather and his wife. And I loved it. I loved seeing her story, the birth of her story, but also reading this, what felt like her authentic voice. It felt like she had written it herself and not, just giving thoughts to a ghostwriter. So I love that one. I also got an ARC from the publishers for this book that's going to be released in October, Monster in the Middle by Tiffany Anik. She is the author of Land of Love and Drowning, which we'll be reading for the Run Right Reads book club in October. So I'm happy that I read her sophomore novel, I guess, first. I'm not sure this is her sophomore novel. Yes, yeah. So Land of Love and Drowning is her debut, I think. So this one focuses on two people who are going to meet. Eventually, they do meet in the last 40 or so pages of this novel. But the first part of the book focuses on their origins, focuses on their parents, who their parents were before they met their spouses, who they were in relationships with their spouses, and how these two people grew up being raised by those people. So it's showing the origin of families and how those two families interact when these two people meet. And I loved it. The man from this relationship grew up in the United States, and so his father, as a black man, would have encountered the racism that just is still prevalent in this country. And his mother as well, growing up in the United States, similar experience. And the woman from the relationship, she is of Caribbean descent. So we see her parents growing up in the Caribbean and this young woman deciding to leave and come to the United States, and what her experience is like as an immigrant, and just how those two very different backgrounds kind of face off, but also enjoy each other and complement each other when they meet. So I love this. Monster in the Middle by Tiffany Anik is a book to look out for in October. And then the last physical book that I finished was What's Done in Darkness by Laura McHugh. This was a thriller focusing on the abuse that's done to women sometimes and disguised as religion and parental wisdom. So we're following a young woman who, right before she turns 18, she is abducted and held for a week and then released. And so a lot of people don't believe that she's really kidnapped. People think that she ran away from her very strict religious culture. Her family is in Arkansas, in one of those really strict communities. And so after she comes back, I guess they think that she's tainted, and so they allow her to leave. And so she lives outside for a few years, and then what seems to be another crime is committed. Someone has gone missing in similar circumstances, and so they ask her to get involved in the investigation. And so she has to go back to the community. And so, alternating perspectives, we're following this woman's journey to kind of finding out what happened to her 5 years ago, as well as what's happening to the women now. And so there's a lot about this book that I really enjoyed. I don't read a lot of thrillers, maybe that's why, but I really enjoyed this one. I thought that it was just really good with the pacing, and so I loved it. I think, there were places where I'm sure people who are strong thriller lovers may have found flaws, but I really enjoyed that one. And this is about me, right? So, aside from that, I read A Paragon by Colin McCann. I read that as an e-copy. I read that from the library. And this was a reread for me, focusing on two men, one Israeli and one Palestinian. Both men lost daughters in the conflicts between Israel and Palestine. And they're both members of a group, a parent support group that's not just comforting each other, but also traveling around the country, around the world, trying to build awareness for what's happening in that space and trying to stop the conflict, really. So over the course of the novel, and this is based on two real people, two real stories. Over the course of 1,001 small chapters, the author sheds awareness, sheds light on the backstory, some of the things that happened that seemed to be unrelated, but led up to the losses of these two young women. We also see how the two men are able to just survive the losses, but also use that pain, channel it into something even more powerful than pain, which is love. And I love that, these two men who could find ways to hate each other because they could both accuse each other of being on the other side and therefore being responsible for the death of their children, that they found ways to become just such close friends. And we see that friendship just pervading through the narrative, and I loved it. I loved the historical inclusions. I loved the lots of trivia that the author included to show the weight of loss, the weight of love, the weight of war, the quest for peace. Loved A Paragon. The second time I read it. The first time I read it, not so much. So there's that. Also read Thunderstruck by Eric Larson. This was narrative nonfiction exploring the birth of wireless technology as it was invented and developed by Guglielmo Marconi in the late 1800s, early 1900s in England. And we focus a little bit on Marconi's life, his loves, his relationships, and the development of his company, the failures and the successes. And we're also seeing there's another storyline that is happening. We're following a couple. And how this wireless technology impacts them later in their life. Fantastic book. Watch my review if you want to hear more. And then, like I said, Liberty. Liberty was the last book that I finished in September, and this one is by Caitlin Greenidge. Also based on a real story, novelization of a real historical event and historical character. The first Black female doctor in New York. Forget her name, Sampson, Dr. Sampson and her daughter Greenidge, and focusing on the mother-daughter relationship as we're meeting this girl in her, as she's like 11, 12 years old and growing up under growing up almost in her mother's shadow, desperately longing to be her mother's, desperately longing for her mother's undivided attention and not being able to get it, and so kind of rejecting things about her mother that she would normally probably cling to just because she's jealous of the attention that her mother pays to science and her patients and the big picture that her mother is working towards. And so I loved this. I loved the presentation of mother-daughter relationships, the complexities of that, and loved liberty. So yeah, of the books that I read in September, I loved almost all of them. I love them. So go check out my reviews if you want to hear further thoughts on any of those books. And that's what I've been reading. So it's October 1st, and I'm going to be making a TBR video. I would add it to this video, but we've already gone 20 minutes. Wow. So I'm going to be making a TBR video. I hope you'll come back for that as well. So thank you so much for watching this video. Let's chat in the comments if you've read any of these books that I talked about, if you were watching my series in September and you want to just give me some kudos on reading all those books. Yeah, I know. I set myself up for failure because I compared my real self to what my anticipated self and said I was going to read 30 and only read 15. So that's fine. That's fine. So yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. Give me a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to see more. Let's chat in the comments. And until next time, we'll be back for another video really, really soon. And until then, happy reading. Bye.